We're here with Steve Scott, the founder of Carbon Genetics. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good. Breathing a little heavy, breathing some CO2.
How much
Part of
CO2
my
are you
daily
breathing right
routine.
now?
What's that?
How much are you breathing right now?
I'm at 3.5%.
Oh my God.
I'll show you.
Yeah,
Here you
we're
go.
we're we're basically at Mars level right now, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
Holy shnikes.
What are you breathing?
I'm through the moon right now. I'm not in this planet anymore. I'm at 3.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your experience like breathing 3.5%?
Right now, I find it hard to articulate my vowels through the mask as a
Yeah,
radio
yeah.
host, but I hope my audience can hear me and I don't sound like Darth Vader.
No, you sound great.
Am I supposed to breathe through my nose or my mouth while I'm in this contraption?
Usually through your nose, but sometimes you can breathe through your mouth. So,
Okay.
been experimenting with that a little bit.
What is
What's that?
CO2?
Well, it's why don't you move yours up to 5% ones?
Go to five?
Yeah.
You trying to make this a challenging interview? Okay. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. This is like that Princess Bride machine. Remember when they kept going up the level?
Yeah.
Revive him or to destroy him?
Yeah.
Well, something. Let's see. Okay. Okay.
All right, you're breathing heavier?
Do you supposed to hold it into your nose?
What do you mean?
Like, like hold your breath once you take in a big inhalation through the nose to let it marinate.
Just breathe normally. So I'm at about 5% here.
I am okay. I'm at 5.5%. Dear God,
Wow.
I'm in Venus.
I would think you'd be breathing heavier by now. Is your respiratory rate go up a lot or?
A little bit more.
Yeah, it's one thing that CO2 does is it as a stimulus for respiration. So they've actually used it for I think you sent me that for sleep apnea where they slowly increase the CO2 to decrease the apneic events when people are sleeping and it stimulates breathing.
I'm at
I mean, you're
five and a
handling
half
it.
percent right now.
What's that?
I'm at 5.5%.
Okay, and how do you feel? Are you breathing
Okay.
breathing heavier? Do you feel that or?
Yeah. Is this what the dinosaurs would feel like when they would breathe?
Yeah, except they would be used to it, so they
What
wouldn't
would they
breathe
be at? What was the
heavier.
percentage of what do they speculate the CO2 was when dinosaurs walked the earth?
When the dinosaurs walked the Earth, that I can't remember to be honest. I think it was like might have been as high as 1%. I don't recall right now. I have to look that up again.
I'm beyond T-Rex level.
You are you are actually, yeah. But you might not be above the naked mole rat level though.
Oh my God.
Naked mole rats, they live between like 5 to 13%, basically.
Have you ever Googled Klaus Schwab? That's what
No.
a naked mole rat looks like in human form.
Rap- is that where we're trying to achieve?
But that's why he hates carbon dioxide because he wants it all for himself.
Yeah, are we gonna look like Charles Schwab when we if we do our CO2 therapy here?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably living underground just like a naked mole rat would.
He probably is, yeah. He's probably got some bunker under there.
How would it be like when you live underground? Would that be a lot of CO2? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have a good ventilation system, it'd be high in CO2. It depends on the ventilation system. Like in submarines, they have a CO2 scrubber because everyone's constantly producing CO2. So they in the olden days, the CO2 levels were at about 1% in submarines, but now they have better CO2 scrubbers, so it's closer to atmospheric levels. But it depends on the ventilation system, really. If they would be breathing a lot of if the CO2 levels would get high underground.
So again, let's go back to the basics. What is carbon dioxide?
I mean, carbon dioxide. What do you mean? What is carbon dioxide like as a molecule, or?
Yeah, like what is it? Why should people think about this for their
Yeah, I
health?
mean, yeah, I mean, CO2 is has a lot of basically it allows. I mean, the most basic thing it does is it increases respiration. It um, allows through the Bohr effect. It allows oxygen to be released from the hemoglobin. It increases vasodilation and increases
Let's go
blood
through
flow to the
let's
tissues.
go through every step of those things you just listed.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to give people an introduction to what these things are, as much as we can. I know you're not a scientist in that way, but you are an engineer.
Right.
You can help us see why we need these different things. So let's start with that
Yeah,
first.
yeah. So without basically going back to the Bohr effect, without CO2, the oxygen would be bound to the red blood cells. So you need CO2 to have the ox. So you could have like a high like SpO2,
What's
and
that?
it's your amount of oxygen bound to the red blood cells, the hemoglobin,
Okay.
and it basically without CO2 you'd have 100% um, SpO2, and it's a common measurement you do at the doctor, measured in a lot of different places, but it's basically shows you how much saturation of
You're
oxygen
talking
you have
about the
on the
little
red.
thing you put your finger in?
Yeah, you put your little finger in that thing, and it'll give you like your heart rate and your oxygen levels. And it's something like in sleep apnea, like people have low levels of oxygen. Is that where it's mostly measured? Also, is like when you do like a sleep lab, and if you stop breathing, your SpO2 is going to go down to like to 90 or below 90, meaning you're not getting enough oxygen. So if you're getting enough oxygen, your SpO2 should be at 96 to 100%, basically. And CO2 is necessary for oxygen to be released from the red blood cells so that can be delivered to the tissues. So that's the first thing. That's called the Bohr effect. And so the more CO2 you have, the more oxygen is going to be delivered to the cells. And I know you had Dr. Lewis Coleman on your um, podcast a while ago, and I was at his house for a little while where we were doing a cancer study, and we were experimenting, and he had a transcutaneous oxygen and CO2 monitor. So we put it on our skin and it measured the oxygen pressure. So we could see that when we were breathing the CO2, that the oxygen was actually being um, released from the red blood cells to the tissues. And um, so that the amount of oxygen, like breathing atmospheric air, when we breathe the CO2, it tripled the amount of oxygen that was being delivered to the tissues using his sensor,
When you
using
breathed
the
it in
breathing it, and also
with this device,
using that device. Yeah,
so you were able to measure it.
we were able to measure it. Yeah, and
And what
other studies that have measured that as well.
and
Um,
what did you find again? You tripled it.
yeah, we tripled the amount of oxygen being delivered to the tissues with breathing the CO2.
That's good.
So are you actually still breathing 5.5%?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, man, you're breathing that like a
Sorry.
like a Martian or Venus, someone living on Venus,
All
or
right, let
naked
me
mole
take a
rat.
break so we can talk about what we said now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So how do I look? Am I
You
alive?
look younger, I think. You look like probably about 20, 23. How old are you?
Uh, so what happened there in that session? What did I just experience? I just did that for 10 minutes. For those who
Yeah,
are
so
listening, folks, I want you to be not confused. So you've heard my voice mumbled. It's because I've been wearing my guest today, his device called the CO2 inhaler by Carbogenetics.
mhm.
And so I wanted to just start off the show cold opening, as we say, with experiencing this device and walking through the introductory use of this device. So for those who can't see, it's like a little nose. How would you describe this? What is this?
It's like an oxygen mask or nebulizing
Nebulizer? Is
mask or
that the wrong word?
nebulizing mask or yeah.
And it's got two little holes. What are those little holes for on the outside of the mask?
The holes are essentially to it's part of the calculation. So we're trying to breathe a certain percentages of CO2. So it calculates so you can it gets brings extra oxygen like room air into the mixture. So it calculates the size of the holes and everything, and it calculates the amount of like CO2 air combination coming up, and then it allows you to have the right levels of CO2
So it's
into the mask.
calculating based on the size of the holes, how much oxygen to let in relation to the CO2 coming in from this little tube
Right.
you have here.
And it allows your exhale to also go through those holes. When you're exhaling, it's going through those holes into the room
And what does
instead of
that
just
do?
staying in the mask.
So that retains more CO2 in the mass through the exhale too?
No, no, it's so it doesn't retain too much. So you're getting some release of the CO2 from your breath.
Okay. And so again, kind of going back to the basics of you said the first thing that CO2 does as a gas is uh it helps the oxygen bind it or bind to hemoglobin or not bind to hemoglobin. Which one?
It allows it to not bind to be released from the hemoglobin.
And you want that to happen, right?
Right, you want that to happen. It's a natural response. When you exercise, you produce more CO2 from those cells that are being used, and that CO2 being released from the muscles will allow oxygen to be delivered to those muscles. So it's like a mechanism built in strategically to allow oxygen to go to where it needs to go,
Mhm.
essentially.
So when you put this device on, why did you develop this device? What were you trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah, I mean it's very highly therapeutic. Um, there's quite a lot of benefits that we'll get into of breathing CO2. Basically, there's benefits like immediate benefits where you're getting more, it increases vasodilation, you're increasing the amount of blood flow that's getting to the tissues.
Is that what vasodilation means? Blood flow getting
Yeah,
to
essentially, yeah. I mean, it's more complicated than that, and there's a lot of factors that influence blood flow and restriction of blood flow and all that. But that's one of the main factors that people talk about is vasodilation. And so it's like increasing the size of the vasculature so that more blood flow can get to the cells. That's another thing that it does. It's CO2 inside of the cell. It as a Lewis acid, it withdraws proteins from or electrons from proteins, making them slightly more acidic. So um, it's actually making cells more oxygen hungry. So it's actually pulling the oxygen into the cells essentially.
what is
And
a Lewis acid? Just give us the basic, analogies or whatever else you can help to explain it for a general.
yeah, essentially, a Lewis acid is something that withdraws electrons from. It's like an electron withdraws electrons from uh, things like proteins and whatnot. And um, so normally, if you think of like an acid, normally CO2 is thought of as acidic when it combines with water to make carbonic acid, but CO2 can be acidic as a Lewis acid um, without without water, basically. It has important physiological properties, and I think a lot of it's still being there's still a lot of unknowns of the effects of it being a Lewis acid, and still being something that's, I mean, it's not really being studied a lot because no one really thinks about it, but it's, there's certain people like Gilbert Lang and some others have looked at it. And
So what
um,
you're an engineer, what it compelled you to want to make this device in terms of like you knew it was going to have therapeutic effects. Are you just a fan of CO2 or how did you become fascinated with bringing CO2 in a therapeutic way to the public?
yeah, I mean, essentially I started out reading the work of Konstantin Buteyko, who I started reading his stuff around like 2009 9ish, and I was introduced to CO2 a little bit before that, but through some other people. But Konstantin Buteyko, high he had like really high blood pressure, like his systolic blood pressure was like over 200, I think it was like 212 or something. And he tried a lot of things to cure his high blood pressure, and he couldn't figure it out. And he noticed that, as a doctor, he noticed that people with chronic illnesses, they tended to hyperventilate. And when
What's
and so he
hyperventilation? Can you demonstrate? I mean, not to put you on the spot. What does
yeah
that mean?
yeah
Ventilate? Like
yeah
that's enough? That's it?
yeah
Like,
essentially
is
yeah
there gradations of hyperventilation, or is like no, you're hyperventilating and then you're not hyperventilating? Like what is
yeah
that?
no, there's gradations of hyperventilating, there's degrees of hyperventilating. So the more
So any
you
kind of hyperventilation is bad in Buteko's mind or your mind, or
um I mean, people use it like in like these trauma breath shop workshops, or like Wim Hof, they use it
yeah.
strategically. But generally it's harmful. And if you think of like anesthesia too, that's like when someone's under anesthesia, they tend to over oxygenate and hyperventilate people. And so they're breathing off their CO2. So when you hyperventilate, you're actually breathing faster than normal. Um, you're increasing your respiratory rate. And when you're doing that, you're breathing off too much CO2. So you're not you're losing that Bohr effect. Your hemoglobin is holding on to the oxygen and it's not being delivered to the cells. If you hyperventilate really fast, your fingers will start clenching up, you'll start tightening up, you'll feel lightheaded because you're not getting enough oxygen to your cells, essentially.
And that creates lactic acid or nitric oxide, or how do all those factors work involved, or is that something kind of different?
Yeah, it's essentially, yeah. I mean, you'll start, if you're not getting enough oxygen to your cells, you start producing energy anaerobically, and that creates through glycolysis, and that creates lactic acid, and that'll acidify the extracellular environment. Um,
And in your idea, and Ray,
and it also creates vasorestriction. So when your CO2 creates vasodilation, so it's when you're hyperventilating, you're creating vasorestriction. So
what does that mean?
it's a reduction in the size of the vasculature. And so what happens is that you're getting there's a lot of things that are happening. So less you're getting less blood flow to the tissues through the restriction of the vasculature. You're getting less oxygen to the cells because CO2 is not there to release it from the red blood cells. And then you're also getting, like, if you think of like the body is like a flowing river, you want flowing blood, and you want, so also those waste products of metabolism, that lactic acid the blood flow becomes more stagnant and creates more vascular resistance. Your blood pressure is going to go up too, and you're getting less of those waste products like the lactic acid being removed from the cell. So it builds up an acidic environment around the cells. And normally there's the pH gradient around the cell. So normally you want the inside of the cell is slightly more acidic, and the outside of the cell is more alkaline in a healthy environment. And when you're
You know what those numbers should be, the sweet spot, or no?
I don't know the exact numbers right
pH.
now, but I just know that in diabetes and cancer, that gradient is shifted, is reversed, especially in cancer and also diabetes. In diabetes, I've seen some studies showing that just just that pH gradient shift will actually cause insulin resistance. And if they shift the pH gradient to the normal pH gradient, then it improves insulin resistance quite a lot. So that's one of the factors that increases insulin resistance. So if you're hyperventilating all the time and you're creating more lactic acid and you're having more vascular resistance and having less blood flow to the cells and less waste products being removed from the cells, then you're creating a unhealthy environment around the cells. So your cells are going to be more insulin resistant and whatnot. And it's going to be, your cells won't get the nutrients. You won't have the waste products removed, and your body would be more like a slow, like a pond or something, and rather than a flowing river of nutrients and removal of waste products and whatnot. And this is
Now,
one of the
when you increase your metabolism, it's said that you increase your basal body temperature, your base temperature,
mhm.
and you also will increase your overall energy and vitality. Wouldn't that mean that you would breathe more rapidly or something? I mean, if you're not if you're not in a slow, low energy state, does that associate with having a higher breathing rapidity or whatever? And how does that connect? How does that relate to what you were saying earlier that you don't want to be hyperventilating because you'll breathe off your CO2? What's going on with those dynamics of increased metabolism, increased temperature? And does that go with increased breathing, or are you supposed to theoretically like breathe slower the higher energy you're at?
No, I mean, I think the higher energy you will breathe faster, but the difference is that when you're healthy, you will retain more CO2. And that's one thing that the breathing machine does, is it helps you retain more CO2. Your body's used to that higher level of CO2. When someone in an unhealthy state or low metabolic rate, they're very CO2 intolerant. So even a little bit of CO2 will make them like hyperventilate and breathe off that CO2. And when you have a high
I didn't notice
metabolism and you're
myself.
producing a lot of CO2, it's
Did you notice me being irritated by the CO2 that I was doing at Mars level?
no, you
Yeah.
look pretty normal.
So
Yeah, I was pretty impressed actually. But
I am training to be the next Mr. Olympian. So
yeah, yeah.
um, is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
Mr. Olympia. Actually, speaking of that, I did have someone that he was training for Olympia this year, and he used my suit. He used my suit mostly for recovery, and he actually won the whole thing for the
Wow.
amateur level. And he attributes part of it. I mean, I can't take credit. He's been working on it for 17 years, but he said it significantly helped him to win Olympia. So
Did he specify how it helped him? Just helped him recover, not have lactic acid built up from his workouts or something, or what?
yeah, you helped him. He felt a reduction in inflammation, and he felt uh, faster recovery from workouts, so he could work out more the next day and whatnot. And just doing the bath, having it on your skin like it does amazing things to your skin. Your skin feels soft
You have
and like
nice skin.
smooth
You
and
can
everything.
show
And
us your skin, or what?
but
Yeah. What
I
did it
mean, it's
used
not
to
bad.
look like? What did it used
I'm gonna be 50 next month in a couple
Well,
months.
let's
So
see that skin again. 50 years old, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah,
Look, if you're those on
yeah,
video, it looks baby soft.
that's right. Yeah, if we can only touch it through the camera, but that can't happen. So
And you used to be wrinkled like a Shar puppy, right? Before,
that's
right?
right. Yep. Yeah.
Very scientifically precise
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, measurement. I'm going with the Shar puppy analogies, but
Right.
regardless, we're being a little fun, but that's fine.
Yeah, and CO2, I guess if you compare like CO2 to like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, like CO2 is actually like more like pulling oxygen into the cells, and it's protective. It's protecting against ROS, reactive oxygen species, peroxynitrates, um, and all of that. And it's protective because the oxygen by
What
itself
did you
is
just say?
toxic.
You got
So
some of the people, these words you use, but we got to make sure we explain them all. You know a lot of stuff on this issue that others don't. You're like a world treasure on CO2, so we got to make sure. What did you say? Nitric? What did you just say?
peroxynitrate is basically a
What is
highly
it?
reactive oxidant that causes cell damage and whatnot. And
Okay.
uh, same with reactive oxygen species too. And people say there's some benefits to reactive oxygen species, like it's a signaling molecule and whatnot, but yeah, it can cause a lot of cell damage and lead to free radicals and whatnot, and
Right.
all
So
that.
how
So
did you get the idea of doing this inhalation device that I've just used and you used?
um
How did you come up with like a this? I know. So you got to a point where you said you started with Buteyko,
mhm,
and he talks about, learning how to breathe properly. Hold your breath for like 60 seconds if you can. That means you're like really healthy.
right.
30
And so a
seconds.
lot of it had to do
30
with CO2
seconds is
tolerance. So
average,
it's,
right?
what's
30,
that?
if you can hold your breath without discomfort for 30 seconds, that's like a sign of average CO2 retention ability. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
From his idea, right?
Yeah, so we can get up to like 60 seconds. I've had a lot of people who have increased their control pause breathing the CO2 because it increases your ability to increases your CO2 tolerance essentially.
Yeah.
And
Um,
then you're going to be retaining more CO2 throughout the day. But the main like the reason why I did this over Buteyko is because CO2 itself uh replicates a lot of things that happen in exercise. So when you go above your normal CO2 levels, it signals your body to basically I was talking about blood flow, the importance of blood flow before, and maintaining a healthy cell and environment and everything. And as we age, the capillaries, they tend to deteriorate, and emotional stress causes certain things. Like Lewis might talk about, like how from the vascular endothelium, like von Willebrand factor be released from the
whoa, whoa,
sympathetic
whoa, whoa.
ganglion. And
Von Villa, who?
von Willebrand factor, it's just a
That sounds
blood
like
factor
a
that's released
villain.
from the
Sounds like a villain death weapon or
right.
something. So what is this?
It's just named after some guy or something, but
I
it's
know
a
he
blood
talks
factor
about
that's
Lewis talks about it, but I'm going to get a more quick answer from you. What is that? Can you give me an analogy or whatever that is?
yeah, it's basically
Learn by
it's
analogies. So the more analogies you can come up with, the better I'll learn, and hopefully maybe audience with me.
yeah, it's usually associated with emotional stress. Like
Really?
people like emotional stress will create more von Willebrand factor, which is basically associated with sympathetic activity, like sympathetic ganglia will release it from the inside of the
What's
blood
that?
vessels, the
Sympathetic what?
ganglia. So
What
like
is
the
that?
sympathetic nervous system will like
Okay.
be releasing this von Willebrand factor into circulation, and then it combines with I think it's factor 8C, which is circulating through blood, and it creates this. It goes through a series of processes, but it essentially forms this insoluble fibrin that creates like this netting that kind of like catches the red blood cells and kind of clumps them together, and it creates vascular resistance in the capillaries. So you're getting less blood tissue flow to the cells and whatnot, and that's part of emotional stress. And eventually, Lewis believes that it'll convert into amyloid protein, and it'll start deteriorating the capillaries and whatnot, and which is what happens in diabetes and other conditions as we age, essentially. And
Amyloid
it's
protein. Is that not good? You don't want amyloid protein or what?
yeah, I think it's there's not a lot of known about it of what exactly how it forms or why it forms, but
It's not good.
um
Is
yeah, Lewis thinks that it's I've talked to him recently. He thinks that it's it's like a halfway stage to collagen or elastin, and it gets stuck somehow. It can't complete the stage or something like that. He knows more about that than I do, um, but essentially it creates deterioration. So basically, what CO2 is doing is that it's increasing the capillary density. There's one study showing that, and it happens in exercise too. That's one thing it's one benefit of exercise is that. So that's so with CO2 therapy, you're getting the immediate benefit of the increased oxygen to the cells. You're getting the protection against the free radicals and the reactive oxygen species and whatnot, and you're getting vasodilation. You're getting more blood flow and everything. And I'll talk about it later, but
and
there's
that's well, say the last thing you said. Go ahead.
so you're getting more blood flow to the cells. And before we go into the like the long-term benefits of it. One of the short-term benefits of like going up to like 4 or 5 temporarily is that it increases your respiratory rate, and so you have more diaphragmatic breathing, so you're breathing deeper and you're having more fuller breaths. And there was a scientist, a researcher, Stephen Elliott. He developed the coherent breathing method, and he developed a device that you put on your ear, and it measures what he calls the Valsalva wave. And when you breathe like shallowly, like Buteyko essentially, there's no Valsalva wave. So it's basically when you breathe deeply, when you're creating this intrathoracic pressure or vacuum. So it's blowing venous blood into the heart and lungs, and so and then when you're exhaling, it's almost like a pump where it's pushing everything to the extremities. And he's measured this wave. He calls it's the interthoracic pressure, and he noticed that when you breathe deeply, you're like normally it takes about 60 seconds for your blood to circulate around through the system completely, and he noticed that it doubled the speed when you breathe deeply. So you're getting more blood flow, you're getting more waste products being removed from the cells more efficiently just by breathing deeply. And I think that's one thing that CO2 does, is it increases the speed of the blood flow. So it's opening up the capillaries, it's opening up, creating vasodilation, and you're getting that benefit of like exercise. When you exercise, that's one thing that your heart is beating faster, of course, but you're also breathing faster and deeper, and it's creating this interthoracic pump, which is like pushing the blood through the system. And he measures it. He has a graph of these waves. So you have in each breath, there's these heartbeats, and then when you exhale, so basically your heart slows down when you exhale, your heart rate increases, and it creates this pressure wave that he measures. He calls that the Valsalva wave, and it creates much greater tissue perfusion to the cells, and he says it doubles the tissue perfusion. And that's one thing that exercise and that breathing CO2 does, is it creates that. I haven't theoretically, that's what I think
kind
it
of
does, but I haven't.
exercise? Aerobic or anaerobic?
um Something that's going to make you probably more like sprinting, or anything that causes you to breathe like faster and deeper.
What's the difference between hyperventilation and deep breathing? Are they the same, or what's going on there? Because you're saying don't, because
Yeah,
you're
but the thing is with the deep breathing with the CO2 is you're not losing CO2. You're still getting enough CO2 to, if you're hyperventilating without the CO2, your vasculature would like constrict, and you get less blood flow to your cells. And
okay.
but
So
but, but if you're hyperventilating with CO2,
with the
keeping
therapy,
that open. Yeah,
okay. So it's a good thing to hyperventilate when you're doing the therapy or not?
I think so. Yeah.
So you want to push yourself to do it, or you want to try
Yeah,
to?
sometimes. Yeah, because yeah, sometimes because you want to get that. That's one way that I do it. That's just one way.
Okay.
That's one benefit. I'm
'Cause I
gonna
thought
go
I
out.
was trying to practice most of the time nose smooth breathing because I thought I was trying to train my brain or whatever body to get in that extra,
I
get
mean
in
that
that
that's one aspect of
CO2.
it. That's one aspect of the training, that you can do it that way too. But there's the
Okay.
other aspect of like breathing deeply, and sometimes I'll even like mouth breathe and like
Yeah.
really get that, because when I mouth breathe, I can really like breathe even deeper and faster. And I think what doing it while you're getting that CO2, I think could be beneficial. I haven't confirmed it, but I'm gonna fly out there and see him and use his machine and like measure the Valsalva wave and the blood flow to
Say what
um,
way? What is it called?
Valsalva. You know the Valsalva mover.
Okay. No.
um uh Maneuver, I think it's called Valsalva
Okay.
maneuver. um
Maybe you put
but
that in
it's
the show notes, whatever that is, a link to that, something.
yeah, it's but he calls out the Valsalva wave, and it's so like your heartbeat creates its own wave, but then the
Yeah.
Valsalva wave, like it's even a bigger wave than the heart rate. So he has a graph where you like see the heart rates going up as the Valsalva wave goes up, and as the Valsalva wave goes down, you can see the heartbeats, I should say.
Is that heart rate
um
variability? Is that related to that?
it is, yeah, when you breathe, then that way your heart rate variability will actually go up
And
when
you
you breathe
want that
like
to
that.
go up.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it's associated
Does
with
it
like,
go up only during the session, or does it continue to go up after you've used it? Does it accumulate heart rate
it.
variability
No,
probability?
it should accumulate over
Okay.
time. You should get and breathing, his method, the coherent breathing method, it's been shown to increase your
But you're saying, just for the sake of the audience's clarity, you're not saying you had to do the coherent breathing method necessarily if you have this device. You could, this alone, breathing deeply with it in your nose and there every day, once or twice a day, can help you with heart rate variability.
yeah, help you with heart rate variability and breathing this in my opinion, and I think it's almost has a lot of the same benefits of exercise. So you're getting like when you're when you're going above the normal amount of CO2 that you have when you're breathing higher levels of CO2, there's been studies showing that it increases capillary density, and that's one thing that happens in exercise is it's a signaling molecule that creates more capillaries, and so you're getting more blood flow, and it's actually restoring the capillaries that have deteriorated, and it's increasing mitochondrial count and quality of mitochondria from the elevated levels of CO2.
As long
And
as the
there's a
session
study
is
that,
going on, or after you stop, it's still doing it right now for you and I after we've stopped. It's doing that right now.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the things after the session. So it's, if you think of like exercise, you're going to get the
Okay.
benefits after you
Okay.
exercise. And so there was
Yeah.
a study done
That's helpful.
with,
That's helpful. So you're saying it's like doing an exercise session where it's not just about whatever's happening in that acute moment of the
right.
activity. It's doing something that's going to have long term, it's doing stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Body's doing stuff.
It's going to have long-term benefits for sure.
Mhm.
And that's, so when you exercise, you're creating more waste products, you're creating more lactic acid, you're creating like all these things. But breathing CO2, I do this like, I just have it sitting next to my desk. I might do it like 3 or 4 times a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But you're getting that same response of exercise, but you're not creating additional waste products. You're getting that removal of the waste products. You're improving the environment of the cells,
So
but you're
you're
also like,
so it's like you're getting your cake and eat it too when it comes to oxygen. You're getting the benefit of oxygenation of the tissue without all of the downsides of oxygen and how it is toxic, right? Or no? Am I going too
no,
far?
I mean, that's right too. But you're also getting some of the benefits. You're not getting all of the benefits of exercise. You're not burning calories. You're not like creating certain adaptive responses to exercise, but you're getting some of the main like cardiovascular benefits of exercise through breathing it, because you're creating more capillaries, you're creating more mitochondria.
It
Um,
sounds like people should make bicycle machines and these treadmills with their device, where you can inhale that CO2 while you're running.
yeah,
That'd be the best of both
I
worlds.
mean,
Or
that'd be hard to do, but the thing is that you're getting some of the cardiovascular benefits of exercise, but you're not getting the breakdown products. You're not getting the waste products of it. So it's a very
but that's what I'm saying. If
cleansing
you if you were
experience.
to if you were to do your breathing machine while you're doing like a treadmill, would that remove the bad products of exercise or no?
Well, I mean, your body already you're when you're exercising, you're producing CO2 anyways. So
You don't need to do it.
your
That's
body's already doing that
overkill.
mostly. And the more you do exercise, the more efficient you are at removing the waste products. You're getting more capillaries, more vasculature. You're improving the lymphatic system, and CO2 does that as well. Without,
So you're saying it's overkill to do them at the same time,
it's
or
probably overkill, but
or would it
the
multiply
thing
that kind of thing?
the thing is with the CO2 therapy, you can do it multiple times per day, whereas exercise, you probably just want to do once a day because you're overtraining. So you can get some of the benefits of exercise multiple times a day. You can get that lift of exercise just by breathing the CO2 with a,
Is it fair to say that you're putting yourself in a state of stress when you're breathing in 4% CO2 or 5% like we were just doing? Is it a state of acute stress?
it's a little, yeah, if you go to a certain level, it's a little bit stressful. Yeah. Cause
I guess
it's
what I'm saying is, how do we know what's good stress versus bad stress? In the Ray Peat world, Ray Peat's always talking about don't
right.
over exercise, don't over exercise, don't over exercise. Your heart will be the same poor quality as a couch potato if you're a marathon runner. So how do you
Yeah.
know, like, how do you know what you're doing with something like CO2 so you're not over stressing your body out?
Um, I would just go by feeling. Like for me, like doing it, I do short sessions. Like I do acute sessions. It's a little bit stressful, but it seems like my ability to adapt to that stress is very quick. So I can do another session like an hour or two later, and it doesn't
What are you
have any
talking about?
negative
Acute
effect.
sessions. What do you mean by that?
Like short term,
Like 5 minutes? Could you have a
yeah,
30 minute
5 minutes or
setting
10 minutes.
and you do what, like 8% CO2?
No, I'll do like I'll start off at like 2% for a little bit, then I'll go up to five, and I might go up to 8%. Depends how I feel. If I'm feeling like sometimes you can tell when you get too much CO2, you can feel like, oh, that's like usually it feels good, but if you've had too much, I feel like, oh, I don't want any more of that CO2. It's kind of like a signal that you've
What does it make
done
you
a little
feel
bit
like
too
when
much.
you've had too much?
It's just like it just feels like you don't want it, I guess. It like I mean it's hard
Does
to
it give you
describe,
a
but it's
headache
like
or does it make you feel dull
I mean, you
head?
can get a headache. Some
Yeah,
people I don't usually get headaches, but some people do get headaches if they've had too much.
yeah.
Um, because it is like too much CO2 will create acidosis, and short term that's okay. It creates that adaptive response with the more capillaries, more mitochondria, and all that. But over the long term, you don't want acidosis over the long term. So depending on your health level, you probably start out with short sessions, like 5 minutes, and maybe for you, maybe it'd be 3% would be a. I go based on like how fast I'm breathing and how I feel, and um, if like someone in poor health, that might go up to 1%, and that might be they 1% might cause them to hyperventilate because they have very low CO2 tolerance.
Mhm.
But the healthier you get, the higher level you should be able to go to, and
Sometimes I've
you definitely
noticed
want
when
to
I've
overdo
tried
it.
it,
But I almost never go over 5 or 10 minutes. Like all of my sessions are like very short, like just 5-10 minutes, and then I never go like I've almost never done 15, 20 or
have you
longer.
ever done like flips or go upside down and water, you know?
Yeah.
I noticed, I'm sure that's something kind of CO2 because I've noticed that, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a feeling in your nose, similar to that
Hmm.
feeling when I've gone up
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
water. I've felt
Yeah.
that on this machine just a little bit, you know.
Oh, did you? Okay, I haven't felt that. I haven't had that same
Well, sometimes
same.
I'll just, just like I'll inhale and hold it while the CO that rich CO2
Oh, okay,
air,
I
I'll
got
just
you. Okay.
retain it for a while and then I'll let out. And I've noticed a little bit of that burn feeling or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
isolation or what's going on there? What's that feeling?
What was it? Say what was it? Is it
That
what you
feeling
said?
of warmth. It's like a
Yeah.
sensation of warmth, or it feels like you. I know it sounds silly, but it feels like you snorted Sprite or something. Or something.
Right. Right. Yeah.
What is that? That's the CO2. Why does it make you feel that little burning feeling? What is that?
It's probably the acidity, I guess.
It's
I mean,
acidity.
CO2 can also like if you go in the CO2 bath, it can make you feel warm because it's creating vasodilation, and there's something with the heat sensors in your body. It does something to that, and like the cold
What
and
does
heat
it mean?
sensors,
I've
like
noticed a couple times when I first tried it, and I haven't done it enough long term to get a long period of like a lot of sessions in, but I've done it a good amount. I'd cough a little bit when you have that coming in strong. Is that normal?
that's yeah. I've heard other people say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess your throat is not used to that level of CO2 or something, or um,
So you do that, and then what do you now? I haven't noticed, and maybe I'm not putting enough percentage yet, but I don't
mhm.
notice too many acute direct feelings of like relaxation or this feels like a spa. It feels like okay, I've inhaled
Mhm.
this gas. And that's about it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to feel it. Maybe I need to increase it. I feel some correlation. I'm always tweaking different things I do in my
Mhm.
weekly, experimentation, but I do seem to notice some correlation with like improved energy and a
Yeah.
little more energy having brought this into the routine. So
Mhm.
what are you supposed to feel a certain kind of what are some things that you hear reported or what do you notice when you
Yeah,
what are
I've
you
noticed.
expecting from an acute standpoint?
Usually, I feel that feeling of relaxation when that's not going above like a stressful amount of CO2, like creating
Okay.
that stress response. So when I'm feeling like when I have a low percentage, it's just like opening up the capillaries, it's increasing oxygenation. Sometimes it almost feels euphoric. And usually I only feel that when I'm at the lower levels of CO2,
What's that?
like 1% or something. And I feel that in the body stream, especially people feel that a lot in the body stream in the suit. They'll feel that deep sense of relaxation, that parasympathetic activity. Um, and people in the suit have said that it's helped release trauma. It's like someone said it was like more than 20 years of talk therapy. Just the somehow it's so deeply relaxing that it um, somehow releases able to release like
What do you
trauma and stuff
mean
like
by
that.
the feeling of relaxation? Like a feeling of sleepiness and like that,
Just like uh
or a mental feeling of joy or something? Like, what are we talking here?
yeah,
What?
almost like a feeling of relaxation, a feeling of like um just like your body is melting. It feels like almost euphoric in a sense. Like it
That's
just
in the
you just feel like
bodysuit.
amazing, huh?
That's the bodysuit that does that.
That's the
That's
bodysuit.
what
Yeah, you
people.
do. I felt that too with the breathing machine a little bit, but it's usually that's not an experience I feel with the breathing machine. It's more the bodysuit. I don't feel it every time either. It's just some of the time you feel that, and usually I feel a lot better after the suit. So I said the bodysuit is more deeply relaxing, and it's like if you have a stressful day, and I would do the bodysuit. You can do the CO2, but I'd breathe at a lower level if you're stressed out. But it's yeah. I sometimes I do the higher level too, but I do it for a short period of time, like 5-10 minutes, um and it kind of gives me that it kind of releases some of that stress. When I breathe the CO2, it has a different way of doing it. I just feel like a melting of that stress away, or that when I'm breathing even higher levels of CO2 for a short period of time.
So, do you actually retain a net increase of CO2 after a session, or do you just breathe it all off during the session or whatever?
I mean, there's not really good data on that, but you should retain more. It should teach you to tolerate more CO2, so you're going to retain more CO2 in your day-to-day life. But also, like CO2, it's been shown to like be stored in bones. Like if like they've done studies of people in the submarines from a while ago, and that it's shown that some of the studies have shown that it like people at people in submarines would retain like 1,000 liters of CO2 in their bones after being in the submarine for several months, and that'd be like equivalent of like 10 pounds of or 8 pounds of like of CO2.
Hmm.
And also like CO2 binds to amino groups. Um, like glycation, like in diabetes, like how sugars will bind to like hemoglobin, like the A1C, but it also bind to a lot of different um, amino groups in your body, and CO2 to do the same thing. So it's being bound to um, amino groups in your body as well. And it's no one really knows like how much CO2 that would be, but it's I know Ray Pettis has talked about that as well, and he said that when certain like hormones or neurotransmitters are heavily carbonated, when they have like the amino groups have CO2 on them, their function is actually different than normal. So it's um, and there's some research on that, but no one's really looked into that in depth. So it's kind of theoretical right now, but it's something that CO2 does, and I think your body generally, according to current scientific data, holds about 120 liters of CO2. And I think through the CO2 therapy, you'd probably hold more CO2. They've also done studies where it took an animal, and they've taken like 1 pound of muscle, and they heated it up, and I think it maybe 1 kilogram of muscle, and it held like I think it was like 1 liter of CO2. So CO2 is stored in the muscles and the amino groups and whatnot. So yeah, I think you'll retain more CO2 from a session.
And so, what I'm getting at is that you will retain some of the actual CO2 that you're introducing in the session, in
Mhm.
addition to it teaching your body how to retain CO2 in the atmosphere in your daily living and breathing, right?
Correct. and it'll also have those other benefits. It have also have those other similar
Does it improve
benefits
your,
to
does the
exercise.
inhalation method improve your skin like you showed with the bodysuit, or do you think you need the absorption through the skin on that one?
I think it'll improve the skin
Does it
through breathing it.
increase muscles? What are some random benefits for people who are, does it increase the size and strength of muscles just by inhaling it, or do you need to do strength training to get any of that done?
You need to do strength training to do that, but
Yeah.
I've had people say that they recover faster. I've even seen people who said they feel stronger breathing in CO2. Like um, someone their bench press went up significantly. They haven't improved in their bench press a lot, and they started doing this breathing the CO2 therapy, and they were able to increase their bench press pretty significantly. So they're getting stronger. So CO2 by itself won't increase your strength or muscle mass or like um I mean, there has been studies showing that CO2 therapy does improve performance. It improves like your exercise tolerance, your aerobic capacity, um, and it changes your muscle fiber type to whatever type of exercise you're trying to do to be more efficient and using oxygen and whatnot. And
Does CO2 have any evidence in the literature that it increases thyroid performance and so forth? Or
I haven't seen any literature like that, but um,
should people eat before they do an inhalation session, or eat afterwards, or like does that have any relation?
um, I don't think it matters that
Like,
much.
does that affect your digestion? Like to do a increase in CO2 while you're eating, or after you've eaten or something?
I did have one user who, through the body stream, she had uh, chronic inertia of her intestines, like very bad constipation, where she had to take prescription medication for it. And doing the CO2 bath, like for after just like a couple weeks, she was able to get off her medication and have normal bowel movements every day. So
Mhm.
it does improve digestion. I don't know, like
Mhm.
I don't really know if you should eat before or after. I've done my own experiments where I've measured my blood sugar,
Mhm.
and I have like a Pepsi or something, and I'd measure my blood sugar. So I do one day where I don't breathe any CO2 after drinking the soda,
Yeah.
the Pepsi, and then I do the next day I would do it, drink the Pepsi and breathe CO2 right after, and I notice my blood sugar goes down faster when I'm breathing the CO2.
So it should. So does that? But has anybody else noticed that it helps with blood sugar regulation for people who are monitoring it?
Well, I mean, it's helped quite a lot with diabetes. Just the complication of diabetes, like the one of the main things of diabetes is the deterioration of the capillary senescence, and CO2 helps restore those capillaries. And it's CO2 is also protective against glycation, sugar binding to um, the hemoglobin and the other proteins in the body. Even like, um, yeah, it can. So it's CO2 is very protective against and restoring some of the losses that someone would have in diabetes. And so I think it's for someone with diabetes, I think it'd be very
What
good for
about
them
heart
to.
disease? People who have plaque filled heart heart problems.
Yeah, I think there's some researchers, can't think of their names right now, but there's some researchers as of recently who think that arterial plaques are happen through the microvascular system on the outside of the arteriole. So it actually like poor like microvasculature and poor blood flow to the outside to the vasa vasorum. So someone noticed that a lot of the plaques happen only where there's a vasa vasorum,
Mhm.
and that there's like this complex microvasculature, like tiny capillaries and whatnot that get blocked up through it could be emotional stress, environmental pollutants, things that we eat in our foods, and whatnot that kind of block up these things. And so someone noticed that creates that arterial plaques start from the outside and works its way in. because it's seeking like there's hypoxia in the area. That's one thing that CO2 does is it reduces hypoxia, which is lack of oxygen. But it's and then also according to Lewis Coleman, who we had on our show, that increased blood flow, increased more like through breathing fast, creates this uh, turbulence that he calls, and it helps breaks up plaques and whatnot, and that's an important process that he talks about. So I could have that benefit in that way too.
How long do you need to do this, and how frequent before you should notice overall systemic improvements like some of the
Um,
described
yeah, you should have improvements, um, like noticeable ones, probably like after a month or two.
of
I'd
daily
say
use or one weekly use or what?
I would do it. For me, I would do it daily. I do mine multiple times per day, like just 5 minute short sessions. You could do it once a day, 5 or 10 minutes. You get benefit. You could do it once. They could do it like 3 or 4 times a week. That you
Is
still
it
get some benefits, but I think the more you do it without overdoing it, the more benefit you get from it.
and overdoing it by
Overdoing it, just too long of sessions or too many sessions.
so is it better to do like 6 5-minute sessions a day or one 30-minute session a day?
I think 6 5 minute sessions.
And why is that?
Um, you can just go. I mean, if you're doing long sessions, your body is going to adapt to that level of CO2, and you won't get the same response. But when you're doing shorter sessions, your body, I guess like you're during the session, your body will adapt to it, and it'll slow your breathing down, and you'll start uh retaining more bicarbonate to level off that, to balance out the acidosis, to balance the pH. Your body will
Does your
retain
body,
more
do you
sodium.
want your body to adapt to it or not adapt to it?
I mean, you want to make certain adaptations to it, like the increase in capillaries and increase in like mitochondrial count and quality and whatnot. Um, but I find it's better if you, like, we've done our own studies on it too, and it's better if you do shorter sessions and your body doesn't fully adapt to it, so you're still getting that stimulus when you do it.
What happens if your body fully adapts to it? What happens then?
Just it won't have the same response. It won't increase oxygenation as much. It won't release the oxygen from the hemoglobin as well as it did
And
before.
that's, see, to me, unless I don't understand it, and I'm sure that's probably it, how come if your body's adapted to it, would it not be doing all of those great things on its own then? That's why it's adapted to it. It's like, oh, this is nothing. This is my normal. This is my daily. I'm fine. I'm good. All my capillaries, everything's so great. I'm healing fast. Isn't that a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
thing?
I mean, there's some benefits to adapting to it. You get the protective aspects of CO2, the relaxing effects, the protective effects of the reactive oxygen species. You're getting um, protective against the peroxynitrates and all that. And so there's benefits. There's benefits to just CO2 in general. There's like two aspects to it. There's benefits to having more CO2 in general that has all those benefits, and then there's benefits to going above what you're used to. So you create that adaptive response similar to exercise. Like with exercise, to create that adaptation, you need to do a little bit more than what you did before, I guess. And if you're just doing short sessions, you're still creating that stimulus
So should you
from what,
do,
what I've read.
is it better to do, say, 30 minutes of 4% CO2 or again, 5 or 6 5-minute set, or I don't know. I'm just trying to look at all the different options people have, like to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
best amount of value out of this
Yeah,
therapy.
for some people it might be easier to do like one session of 20 minutes if that's what time allows for. Like I have mine sitting here at my desk. I can do it. Like for me it's easy. I just press one button and ready to go with
And
one
what's the
session
best
for
way to
5 minutes.
not over adapt if you want to keep your body on its toes, so to speak, with using a longer term session? Is it to do a lower percentage of CO2 or what?
Um I guess
If you do
not to
30
over adapt,
minutes, you got 8% here. You wouldn't recommend people do 30 minutes at 8% or no?
definitely 100% not. No, that'd be way too much.
No.
Um, it seems like
Is it better to
you can
do
kind of you
five
can
minute
kind of
sessions at 8%? Is that good?
what's that?
Is it better to do 5 minute sessions at 8%? Will that always keep your body trying to adapt because it's so high, but it's a small amount, so a small amount of time?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't recommend people doing 8% unless they're like feel comfortable doing that. But if 5% could be a lot for a lot of people, and I'd recommend that, or like 4% even, or three for some people it could be 3%. But 8% is like the upper limit of
Why?
what you should do.
What's the value of it being there? Just
The value of it, I mean, the value of it being there is for people who have a high CO2 tolerance, so they can create that adaptive response to it.
so if we could you measure like if you'd be cool if you could measure like athletes or just regularly fit people who are active in high altitude towns and put them on
Mhm.
this machine and see what they do at 8%, or would that not correspond to their,
Um,
adaptation to the higher altitude? I'm curious if they
yeah,
would.
no, that's a good question. I'm not really sure either, to be
Wouldn't that
honest.
be
But
interesting to see?
yeah, yeah,
Because theoretically, your machine is kind of in some way mimicking the effects of high altitude living, or what? I don't know.
yeah. It's mimicking. You're retaining more CO2, so you're getting those like long-term benefits of like the naked mole rats, for example. They're at high levels of CO2 all the time, so you're getting certain benefits of the CO2 that you're exposed to all the time, and um, but there's also the benefits of increasing it above, like if you're breathing like 23 hours a day and 55 minutes, you're breathing normal air, your body's going to be used to that most of the time. But when you're just doing 5 minutes, your body's not used to that, so it's creating that stimulus during that time to
Mhm.
create more capillaries, more mitochondria, increasing vasodilation, and doing all the things that it does. And
I noticed that when you do a session of it, the CO2, when it comes out into the regulator device you have, right?
Mhm.
You want to keep the regulator at what, 20 PSI?
Yeah, 10 to 20 is good. It doesn't matter too much, but yeah, 10 to 20 about.
What is that gonna affect the velocity of how the CO2 comes in or no?
It shouldn't affect it.
Okay. And then when you do a session, you'll notice the blue tube gets a little condensation and cold. Is that okay? And the regulator.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean that's normal if you're doing that. Only happens if you're doing pretty high levels, but
Good Lord. I need to stop climbing Mount Everest, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
I think I'm 30% CO2 now, my friend. So
yeah,
I've reached another level of nirvana.
yeah. I guess yeah. Some people find it addictive too. I've had a lot of people say that it's addictive. They love the feeling of it when they're doing the short sessions. Um,
Isn't it fair to say CO2 is food? I mean, that's how Lewis Coleman describes it as cellular food.
um, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it like that, but
Mitochondria eat it, right? In your body, in your cells.
do they? I don't know.
I don't know. That's what he said. So,
Okay. I'm not sure. I know it helps them use oxygen better, but um maybe
what
I
is an
haven't
analogy that relates CO2's relationship to oxygen? Do you have a good one?
yeah, the yin and yang, I guess would be like
Or is CO2 the assistant to oxygen, or is
yeah,
it
CO2 is the assistant to oxygen. It paves the way for oxygen to get into the cells, and it's protective against for oxygen too.
so children would probably have really high CO2 retention related to compared to like middle-aged people?
Yeah, they should. The healthier you are, the more youthful you are, the better CO2 tolerance you would have. Like my mom, when I give this to my mom too, when she first started using it, just like even like less than 1%, she'd be like, it was like her CO2 tolerance was terrible. It was like, but the more she did it, the more she could go to the higher levels. And because just because I do 8 or you do 8 or I do 5 or whatever, it doesn't mean that someone else should do. They should do what they should based on how they feel like their respiratory rate. If like 3% is making you breathe fast, and that's all you really need to go. I would base it on like how fast you breathe. Like if you're doing 2%. I mean, you can go up to a little higher and see if you can handle it, but I wouldn't recommend going to a higher level at it for a long period of time.
Or you're gonna be singing like Creed eventually. You're gonna
Was
be
that?
you're gonna be like singing like Creed. Can you take me higher? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
once you get to a higher state of CO2 retention, that's gonna feel like you're on the top of the mountain. Uh,
Yeah.
well, I'm fascinated by this, and I'm gonna continue to use it. And I appreciate you sending me one and let me try it out. And I think this
Hmm.
is important for folks. I hope that people who are interested in this give it a shot and give it a chance to see if they have an opportunity to experiment with something like this and maybe adapt it to. You think it's not a novelty? You think it's an essential part of their health maintenance in this country, right?
I do. I think it's one of the most important things you can do for your health. I just got an
It's more
email.
important, CO2 or brushing your teeth? Go.
Well, uh, man, that's I mean both are super important, but um,
You just got an
uh,
email.
what's that?
You said you just got an email from who?
Oh yeah, yeah, from a customer who said that he's done a lot of different therapies. He said the CO2 is the most powerful one. That he just sent it to me yesterday. He said it was the most. I can even like pull it up really quick. You can see exactly what he said. So he was doing breath light. He said, "Hi Steve, update for you. I think CO2, the CO2 machine has been one of the most effective therapies I've used, and I've noticed a difference in more energy and being more calm and an improvement in his libido and a bunch of other things. So it's helped him a lot. So I think could be a powerful therapy for some people, and it seems to help other therapies that you're doing be more effective as well.
What's more important, red light therapy or CO2? What do you think?
Probably CO2 therapy. I think both are very important. I'm a big fan of red light therapy as well, but I think CO2 is better. But I think red light therapy is
What is CO2's
also.
relationship to light and red light? Does it have any kind of interaction or whatever? I'm sure it does, right?
Um, Probably does. I know. I know that CO2 absorbs infrared light. That's what people say that causes global warming. Um,
So it probably helps
and
your body absorb more red light or something. I don't know. Just think.
potentially, yeah, potentially. Um, I haven't thought about that relationship, but I know both like infrared light and CO2 both help to structure the water in the cell, and which is important for maintaining a healthy cellular environment. So,
And if you put a naked mole rat up to this inhalation, he would just be like, "Ah, this is nothing for me," right? And
oh
it,
yeah, yeah, it would be nothing for naked mole rat. It'd be
he'd be
like
inhaling that, just he'd be just smiling at you like you've done nothing.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
But they
They've
live.
been there's the
But
studies
for
where they have
folks who don't understand the naked mole rat reference, what does that mean? Besides looking like Klaus Schwab.
yeah, naked mole rats. They live in an environment of high CO2 levels of like between 5 to 6, even up to 13% CO2. And they've done studies where they have different chambers where naked mole rats can go into, and the naked mole rats prefer to go into the higher CO2 chambers, like the 13, or I think it was 11 or 13%, like that. And they had other chambers that were like 5%, and they would like gravitate to the higher CO2
And they lived.
chambers. But basically, naked mole rats, they live like at least 17 times longer than regular mice or rats. Like
They're ugly.
regular,
We're not saying you're going to look like a naked mole rat if you do this, right?
no, they're pretty ugly, but
Is that the cost of having anti-aging? Is you look like hell? Is that the is that the
no, you're not
bargain?
going to like Carl Schwab or naked mole rat, but
And they're
but
just in those little chambers, just
basically,
breathing it in like
yeah,
that all day. Like they're just seething with
yeah, and also they have a
their
lower.
faces. They look so vicious. Some of them.
I know, and one thing about them is they don't age, so the chance of them dying at 1 years old or 5 years old or 10 years old or 20 years old is the same, or even like 33 years old is the same chance of them dying at a young age. So basically, as we age, the chance of us dying from something is increased, but for them, they don't seem to age, and they
But
also
wouldn't
never get
that
cancer and whatnot. And
when they're hitting 13% CO2, wouldn't that theoretically I'm not asking you, you got to be careful, but speculating. But wouldn't that seem to suggest that we should be able to do, you know, 8% CO2 theoretically, tons of times a day and not have problems, or no? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, or they just have them. I'm sure we're not the same physiologically, of course, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if they're at 13% and they don't get sick from nothing, well, isn't that give us a blueprint to maybe one factor that could help us like it benefit similarly, or no?
I mean, potentially we've done some studies where we take mice and we have them at 10% CO2 at a time, and we have other mice that we just give them CO2 like for an hour and a half a day or like half hour or something like that. And um, the thing that we're studying, it seems they do better with the just periodically having CO2 throughout the day, but for lower amounts of time. But I mean, yes, Nick mole rats, they've lived in high CO2 environments for thousands of years and have adapted to that. So the mice that we had, they adapted to 10% CO2. They did all right. We don't know everything that happened to them physiologically, but
You have to, I would imagine that if that's increasing their metabolism, you'd have to increase their food, right?
yeah, yeah, I think we measured the amount of food they ate, and I can't remember if it was increased by a lot, but
But it's
I think naked mole rats in general have a sort of a low metabolic rate. Um, so I don't think it always equates to a high metabolic rate because they also have less oxygen in their environment too, and they're producing less reactive oxygen species and free radicals that can lead to damage to cells and aging and whatnot.
so why would CO2 be associated with high metabolic rate in humans?
Um,
Just different.
I guess I don't really know. I just know that one way to measure metabolic rate is the ability to like how much oxygen you're consuming, and CO2 will remove hypoxia, so you're going to be consuming more oxygen than you would without it if you're
But it
hyperventilating or
theoretically
breathing.
shouldn't associate with increased aging from oxygen if you're getting the reactive oxygen species and what was the other thing dealt
Yeah,
with?
peroxynitrate and free radicals and whatnot, and um, lipid peroxidation.
What's
But
the
yeah,
difference
you're
between reactive oxygen species and free radicals again? I think I asked you this before.
free radicals is just further down the process, I guess, further down the road. Um,
What's the
like
most
free like reactive oxygen species can lead to free radicals, and it's just the damaged cells. And reactive oxygen species itself, there is research saying that it could be signaling molecules, like it could be beneficial in some situations. But
what's the most exciting thing about CO2 research and CO2 therapy that you think about?
the most exciting thing is that for me, is that it replicates a lot of the cardiovasculature benefits of exercise.
Mhm.
Um, and getting some of those benefits of being able to do it multiple times per day and getting that benefit. I can't really say that it cures any diseases or it helps with any conditions really, but it seems to help with performance and like having more energy and being calmer during the day. And it may help with some other things too. But
And what's the website if people want to check it out and buy this CO2 inhaler?
yeah, that's carbogenetics.com.
Okay.
So they can go there. And yeah, for this show I can temporarily give a discount too, and I use a discount code. How about we use David, discount code David,
Okay.
and they can get 15% off.
All right. Very cool. That's exciting. I appreciate that explanation and introduction to CO2 as therapy. And again, if you're interested in pursuing it, check out carbogenetics.com. And the CO2 inhaler is there at the top of the menu, right? Or you can see that pretty close.
Yeah, it's right at the top. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a
Lots
good
of
time.
fun.